Good evening, everyone. We'll get started soon.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so let's get started. Today we'll be covering organization structure in procurement, which is chapter 3. And next week we'll complete with chapter 4, which will end our module M1. Right. So that's the agenda for the next 2 weeks. Today chapter 3 and next week will be chapter 4. Right. Again, remember this is a constructed response module, essay question. So the way to answer the question is to focus on the command word and make sure that you are elaborating and explaining with example, either from your organization or organization that you're familiar with, or if it is based on a case study, then related to the case study. So you cannot have bullet points of answer. They should be well explained. And if it's a 25 marks question, you should be having 5 unique points explained properly, right? You cannot be having the same thing repeated in the sense that using different words. And if it is 15 marks, 3 important points. So 5 marks per point. Now, organization structure in procurement, very important, because remember, procurement is what I call plays a stewardship role within an organization. There is no reason to spend organization resources when it is not needed. And if you are spending the organization's resources, you have to make sure that you are spending it value for money. Remember, when you're spending organization resources, it should be economy, spend less, right? Efficiency, spend well, and effectiveness, spend on the right things or spend wisely. So you play a stewardship role, right? You play a stewardship role. Control the outflow of money, because material constitutes almost 50% of the total cost for an organization. And you have to make sure that you strive to achieve the value for money, which is enshrined in the 3 E's. Which also means that many a time there might be certain issues with procurement personnel in terms of dishonesty, integrity, and so on and so forth. So you need to make sure that the procurement function is transparent. The procurement professionals have a very high standards of integrity. They have certain code of practices, code of conduct within their organization, as well as enforce similar code of conduct on the supplier organization. And there has to be a governance mechanism in terms of policies, procedures, accountabilities, responsibilities identified, so that procurement can play the role in a diligent manner. It's very important for procurement to raise the respectability of the profession. You should not be seen as an organization that is corrupt, that suppliers can win contract by bribing. Suppliers can win contract by kind of getting insider information or through some relatives or whatever. So those are the things that you need to keep in mind when you are looking at procurement function. Plus, in the supply chain, similar thing. You have to make sure that your suppliers behave in a way that you want them to behave, code of conduct. They treat their suppliers, then they treat their customers well, they treat their own employees well. And you need to enshrine within your terms and condition aspects that in the event certain suppliers do not follow the code of conduct, what can be the so-called repercussion, right? And only last week in Singapore, Dyson, which is a consumer electronic company, terminated a contract with one of the large suppliers in Malaysia because they were found to be indulging in unethical practices, or especially with relation to labor. And because they were under investigation with the FBI in the US. Dyson also did their own investigation and then terminated the contract. So you need to make sure that you're not just imposing certain standards on yourself, but you're also imposing a similar standards on the supplier and the supply chain. And when we talk about governance, we talk about structure, we talk about systems, we talk about policies, procedures, and so on. So we'll talk about certain types of organization structure within the procurement function. So corporate governance, like I said, it's about the content. Remember, generally the policies and the procedures in organization will be different from one organization to another organization. But corporate governance always have similar elements. We talk about vision, we talk about mission, we talk about roles, we talk about responsibilities, we talk about accountabilities, we talk about measuring whether people are doing what they're supposed to do through certain internal audits, through some performance management systems, and so on and so forth. So that is common in all organizations. Otherwise, you cannot run an organization. The organization will be like, especially small organization is fine. Startup is fine. But once you have established an organization, you want to make sure that that organization has certain rules to run. Otherwise, it will be a wild west out there, everybody having their own way of doing things. And many a time you may end up with certain unethical practices. Right? If there is a good governance mechanism, employees will put the organization interest before their personal interest. If there is poor governance mechanism, employees will put their personal interest before the organization interest. And large organizations, you find such corrupt practices where individuals want to benefit from the position that they are in. Governance mechanism, very, 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 very important. It encourages positive behavior. Remember, when you know that there are rules, there are regulations, there are policies, there are processes, it helps to inculcate positive behavior. Banks look at the organization and lending institutions look at the organization, say, yeah, this organization works in a structured, systematic way. They're willing to lend money. If the organization has poor governance mechanism, banks or lending institution will not lend money. The cost of capital will be very high. Decision making will be much better. Risk will be much lower in terms of decision making. There'll be good internal controls, better planning in terms of achieving a strategy. Plus, it attracts good people. Remember, if the organization has poor reputation, poor governance mechanism, people really don't want to work for such organizations actually. Right? So with corporate governance, you can attract good people, talented people. And procurement even important, like we discussed. Remember, you have a very what I call fiduciary duty kind of thing. You owe to the company that you would be spending the money in a manner that is ethical, right? Because your decision benefits certain suppliers over other suppliers. So supplier may want to induce, tempt, bribe, right, to get business. So you have to make sure that there are systems of checks and balances in place. There are controls, process, technology, systems controls, and audits to ensure that people follow the rules. Right? One of the things that is common in procurement is conflict of interest, especially for small countries like Singapore, where a lot of people know each other. For a large country, it may be fine, but for a small country or even certain country, Asian countries, there might be a situation where you come across someone who has certain interest in other organization, right? And then you become unreliable. you cannot be trusted because you have an interest. You're putting your interest before anybody's interest. You know the person in the suppliers organization who is actually set up by your spouse, by your friend, by your relative. So when they make money, you make money. But you have certain shareholding. There is certain vested interest. Right. So that will come into question when whether your action has been or your judgment is biased or unbiased. So managing the conflict of interest is very important. First, disclose. Most organizations have a disclosure framework, right? Every year or on a periodic basis, you disclose your potential conflict of interest. In banks, for example, if you are even investing in shares, you have to declare. Distance. If a manager has suggested that the individual who had disclosed does not have direct input with the contract, the individual should distance himself. Say, sorry, I cannot participate in this procurement event. Okay. If the procurement professional cannot distance, then I can delegate certain tasks. The task especially related to communicating with the supplier. Right. So I delegate tasks to colleague who has no interest in the supplier. I may have, but he does not have. Disassociated. That's the highest order. I don't just delegate. I say sorry. I disassociate. I kind of recuse. Complete objectivity. I don't even want to know what is happening. Don't get me involved. Don't send email. Don't update me. Don't send me minutes of the meeting. Courts do that. Judges do that, right? Judges will recuse themselves if they see that there's some conflict there. They'll say, sorry, I don't want to be a judge here. So friend, relative, family member, you have created an organization in which you are a director, accepting hospitality gift in exchange of certain contract award. All these are examples of conflict of interest. So for a procurement function, in order to work in a transparent and efficient manner, you have to put in place certain set of codes, right? A set of guidelines on what is unacceptable behavior. Remember, ethics is differentiating the right from the wrong, right? Most people have grown up knowing that this is right, this is not right. But then you cannot depend upon the morality of the people. Right. I cannot run an organization based on morality of the people. I have to put in place guidelines. What is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Clear cut, documented. Everybody reads it, everybody acknowledges it, there is an auditing. Internally, as well as with my supplier, I also impose the same code of conduct on the supplier, and Dyson quickly acted. So human rights, for example, modern slavery, working condition, child labor, fair pay. A lot of time, maybe they underpay because they are human trafficked, right? Illegal immigrant, bribery, coercion, conflict of interest, gift giving, fair trade. You have to make sure that your suppliers are treated fairly. You do not squeeze until they don't earn profit. As a result, they go and squeeze the labor cost. At the end of it, the labor bears a burden. Your decision has an impact on the labor. The environment, they sacrifice environment because they have to make money. So in the triple P bottom line or triple bottom line, you have profit, which is important. But if company is not making profit, they'll start to do some sacrifice. So they sacrifice people, they sacrifice planet, because there's cost associated with that. Right? And if you're squeezing their contract to such an extent that they barely make profit, they're not going to now take care of the environment for you. So you have to make sure that your negotiation is fair, your contracts are fair. Like I said, in terms of ethics, there is a morality issue. Ethics is generally knowing what is right and what is not right. This is right, this is not right, acceptable by the society. Of course, not everyone in the society has the same attitude of morality towards morality. So I have to put in place certain practices that could be open and fair competition, separation of duties, maybe job rotation, checks and balances. And it can be anywhere, dealing with procurement, dealing with production, dealing with research, maybe sometimes. A lot of times they say, hey, don't do so much research on at the genetic level. You may transform a human being. It's not ethical. Agriculture, for example, genetically modified seeds. You do not know what is the repercussion of it going to be. Maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, it may have an impact on health of people. A virus, for example, COVID, coronavirus, whatever. A lot of time, ethical issues involved. Why are we researching on a virus? Maybe is it some, whatever, conspiracy theories, a lot around that. So ethical issues are there, not just in procurement, but everywhere. Right? But like I said, you cannot be leaving it to the individual's morality. You have to put in place a framework. You have to define what is right and what is not right. What is seen as honest, integrity, and what will be not seen as honesty, respect, and integrity. Obviously, when you go to a supplier and say, hey, I will give you information, you give me money, that is wrong, 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 wrong. You lose respect. You are seen in the society as a dishonest person. And if there is an investigation, you also have a criminal, it's a criminal record if you're caught in that.